For decades, everyone thought they knew what the Amazon rainforest was hiding. Trees, rivers, animals, and emptiness. The absence of civilization, the absence of dense human history. Then a technology looked beneath the leaves, and what it found changed what we thought we knew about one of the most mysterious places on the planet. Part 1. What the forest was hiding. There's something peculiar about the way dense rainforests keep their secrets. Not actively, they're not trying to conceal. They simply do what forests do. They grow, they cover, they absorb. And under vegetation thick enough, centuries of human history can remain invisible to a human eye moving across the surface. The Amazon is the most extreme case of this phenomenon. The largest forest mass on the planet. 5.5 million square kilometers, a space so vast you could fit Western Europe inside it several times over. Its trees form a canopy so dense that in some places, sunlight takes hours to reach the ground. What that ground contains, the human eye cannot see from above. For decades, this invisibility translated into academic certainty. 20th century archaeologists and anthropologists held a relatively consistent view of what the Amazon had been before European colonization. Small, mobile human groups living by hunting and gathering, with no permanent structures or complex political organizations. The forest itself seemed to confirm this view. No visible ruins, no apparent monuments, no trace of what we usually associate with great civilizations. This certainty was comfortable, and it was partially wrong. The first challenges began in the 1990s and 2000s, when archaeologists working in areas cleared for agriculture started finding dark earths. Terra preta, that dark, fertile soil that ancient Amazonian peoples had deliberately produced through sophisticated farming practices. Artificial soils, created by human hands, across thousands of hectares. The forest was hiding something, and the instruments to see it did not yet exist. Stay with us. What follows will change everything. Part 2. The technology that sees beneath the leaves. In 2010, a team of researchers flew an aircraft equipped with a LiDAR system over a forested area of the Bolivian Amazon. LiDAR, light detection and ranging, is a technology that sends millions of laser pulses per second toward the ground and measures how long each pulse takes to bounce back. What the vegetation intercepts is algorithmically filtered out. What the pulses reach, the ground itself, is mapped with millimeter precision. What the researchers saw on their screens, once the data was processed, stopped them cold. Shapes, geometric, precise, structures that didn't match any known natural formation. Terraces, ditches, roads. The outlines of human organization of the territory, drawn into the soil at depths that centuries of plant accumulation had covered but not erased. LiDAR doesn't just reveal structures, it restores them in their full topographical context, allowing archaeologists to see how structures separated by kilometers of forest connect to one another, how roads link them, how the whole forms a system rather than an accumulation of isolated sites. What made the archaeological community particularly attentive to these early data sets was their coherence. The structures LiDAR revealed were not isolated anomalies. They were organized. They covered considerable areas, and they had never been seen, not because they didn't exist, but because the instruments to see them did not yet exist. Since those first overflights, the technology has become more refined and more widely available. Teams in Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru have begun systematically scanning areas of the Amazon, and what they have found has accumulated, year after year, into a body of evidence that forces us to rewrite what we thought we knew. Part 3. The circles that shouldn't have been there. It was the Amazonian geoglyphs that first captured the public imagination. Those immense geometric shapes carved into the ground, visible from the air, covering areas cleared for agriculture in the Brazilian state of Acre. Circles, squares, rectangles, octagons. Some reach 300 meters in diameter. Some are connected to each other by causeways that stretch for kilometers across the terrain. Their geometric precision is striking. Smooth curves, right angles, symmetries that indicate a mastery of geometry, and measuring tools that no one had assumed existed in this region at that time. More than 450 have been identified in Acre State alone. Statistical models suggest that if this density holds across areas still forested, the total number in the region could exceed several thousand. What makes these structures particularly intriguing is what they do not contain. Archaeological excavations conducted in these spaces have not revealed large quantities of artifacts, domestic waste, or bones. What you would find at an ordinary habitation site. The geoglyphs do not appear to have been villages. They appear to have been special spaces, places used for specific functions, infrequently, and perhaps not permanently inhabited. Brazilian archaeologist Martti Persinen, one of the first to systematically study these structures, described the feeling of seeing for the first time, from the air, the extent of what no one had documented. The impression of a map being rewritten in real time, of a history stretching beyond all previous limits. These structures were built. They required organized labor, over years, by populations that had the human resources and technical knowledge to devote time and energy to them. They are not the work of a primitive civilization. Part 4. A civilization no one expected. The accumulation of LiDAR discoveries since 2010 has produced something the archaeological community can no longer ignore. Evidence of dense, organized, technically sophisticated human presence in areas of the Amazon once thought empty or marginally populated. In 2018, a study published in Nature Mapped, using LiDAR data and archaeological excavations, an area of the Bolivian Amazon known as the Llanos de Mojos. What the researchers found exceeds in scale what previous models allowed them to imagine. Dozens of sites connected by more than 600 kilometers of roads and canals, some raised to manage seasonal flooding, with agricultural and hydraulic systems covering millions of hectares. The population that built all this, sometimes called the Kasarabe civilization, lived in cities, not villages, urban centers with architectural hierarchies, prestige zones, monumental structures, water management systems that enabled intensive agriculture in a region subject to seasonal floods. These people were not hunter-gatherers living on the forest's margins. They had transformed their environment on a scale and with a complexity that places them in the same category as the great pre-Columbian civilizations of the Andes or Mesoamerica. And yet, their name is not taught in schools. Their history has no monument visible from the surface. The forest covered them so completely that 5 centuries after European colonization, archaeologists equipped with airborne lasers are still discovering them. What we call virgin jungle may have been, in large part, a forest regrown atop the ruins of a civilization that epidemics brought by Europeans had wiped out before anyone had time to observe it. Part 5. The questions the circles raise. The geoglyphs, the roads, the cities, all of this is documented. What is not documented is why. Why build circles 300 meters in diameter with remarkable geometric precision in regions not easily visible from the ground? This is not a mystery of technical skill. The populations who built them clearly knew what they were doing. It is a mystery of function and meaning. Several hypotheses circulate within the archaeological community. The first is ritual. The geoglyphs were ceremonial spaces, places of periodic gathering for communities dispersed over large territories, symbolic territory markers that defined collective identities in the landscape. excavations that found few domestic artifacts support this hypothesis. A space used rarely and for special functions leaves fewer ordinary traces than a habitation site. The second hypothesis is astronomical. Some geoglyphs align with precise celestial events, solstices or equinoxes. This alignment is not accidental in several documented cases. Ancient Amazonian peoples had astronomical knowledge that the construction of these structures presupposes. The third hypothesis, more recent and more unsettling in its implications, is that some of these structures were not purely symbolic, that they had functions of environmental management, water control, delimitation of agricultural spaces, that what we interpret as monuments may also have been infrastructure. These hypotheses are not mutually exclusive. A structure can be simultaneously a ritual place, an astronomical marker, and a space management system. And perhaps that's what makes these questions so difficult to resolve from the outside. We look for separate functions where the builders may have thought in terms of unity. Part 6. What the forest hasn't told yet. As of 2024, LiDAR mapping of the Amazon is far from complete. Recent estimates suggest that less than 10% of the total area of the Amazon forest mass has been scanned at a resolution sufficient to detect archaeological structures. 90% remains to be explored. What this proportion represents, in terms of discovery potential, is difficult to state without falling into speculation. But if the densities of structures observed in the scanned areas hold, even partially, in areas still untouched by any LiDAR analysis, then what we have found so far is only a fraction of what exists. International teams continue to work in Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia. Funding is being organized. Data is accumulating. And with each new publication, each new analyzed overflight, the map of what we know expands in directions that previous models did not predict. What these discoveries change is not merely archaeological. They change the way we think about the forest itself. The Amazon we want to protect, and we have every reason to want to protect it, is not a pristine forest untouched since the dawn of humanity. It is a forest that was shaped, inhabited, transformed, and sometimes densified by millions of people over millennia. What we call virgin forest may be in large part an abandoned garden. This reality does not diminish the urgency of protecting it. It enriches it. It says that protecting the Amazon also means protecting the heritage of entire civilizations whose existence we are only beginning to understand. The forest is still hiding things, and every laser that pierces it reveals a page of a history no one had yet read. The Amazon rainforest was supposed to be empty. Then a technology looked beneath the leaves and found roads, geometric circles, entire cities that centuries of vegetation had covered. If 90% of the forest has not yet been scanned, then what we've found is only the beginning of what awaits. If this video opened your eyes to a larger world than the one usually shown to you, subscribe. Next time, it goes even further. This concludes our journey to the heart of the extraordinary and the real. I hope these discoveries struck you as much as they struck me. To continue exploring these frontiers of the real, I invite you now to watch one of the 2 videos shown on the screen. Don't leave without choosing one. Mystery awaits.